He is a phenomenal fighter in every facet of the game, as am I. And I think this is one of the most well-rounded fights we've ever seen in the UFC, full stop.
Wake up, I open my eyes, I'm ready to fight. Now, I'm just ready to kill.
Makachev!
There is a moment in a fight, usually somewhere in the back half of round 2, where a fighter looks across the cage and realizes that the plan is already gone. Not that he's losing, not that he's tired. That the thing he spent 8 weeks building in a gym, the thing his coaches drew on a whiteboard, the thing he told a camera he was going to do, does not exist anymore. It was taken from him quietly in the first 4 minutes, and nobody told him. That moment is what separates Islam Makhachev from every other fighter in the UFC. And on August 15th, 2026, in Philadelphia, he did it for the 17th time in a row. More consecutive wins than any fighter in the history of the promotion. But the most disturbing part of the Makachev era isn't what he does to people inside the 25 minutes. It's what they say afterwards. Because one of the men he beat this year walked out of that cage, picked up his phone and called Makachev the greatest fighter the sport has ever produced. He had lost. He had just had his one shot at a world title taken off him. And that was his verdict. Let's get into it. First, you have to understand the scale of what UFC 330 actually was. This was not just another title defense. Anderson Silva's record of 16 straight UFC wins had stood for more than 13 years, set between 2006 and 2012, in an era people still treat as untouchable. Makachev walked into Xfinity Mobile Arena needing one more win to break it, in a division he had only entered 9 months earlier. Philadelphia was packed for it. A championship main event, a challenger in Ian Machado Gary trying to become only the second undisputed UFC champion Ireland has ever produced, and a champion who had already vacated one belt to go hunting for a second. The numbers going in were absurd. Makachev was 2-8-1. His only professional loss came in October 2015. The streak had started in September 2016, meaning that not a single person on earth had beaten Islam Makhachev in almost a decade. 13 career submissions, 4 successful title defenses at lightweight, a move up a full weight class that ended with him taking the welterweight belt from an undefeated champion in his very first fight at 170 pounds. That is the backdrop for everything that follows. October 2022, Abu Dhabi. Makhachev fights Charles Oliveira for the vacant lightweight title. Oliveira being, at that point, the most dangerous finisher the division had ever seen. A man with more submissions than anyone in UFC history. Makhachev takes him down, mounts him, and submits him in the second round with an arm triangle.
Lightweight champion of the world, Islam Makachev!
Here's why that mattered. The entire argument against Makhachev before that night was that his resume was thin. He had beaten good fighters, not great ones. Oliveira was the test case, and the test lasted less than 7 minutes. The consequence was immediate and permanent. From that night forward, nobody in the lightweight division was allowed to say the word untested again. The question changed from can he beat elite fighters to what does anyone actually do about this? February 2023, Perth. Alexander Volkanovski moves up from featherweight in front of his own country and gives Makachev the hardest 25 minutes of his career to that point. A lot of people scored it for Volkanovski. A lot of people still do. And this is where the first genuinely revealing piece of testimony arrives. Because Volkanovski later described what fighting Makachev is actually like from the inside. Talking to Ariel Helwani, he explained that most opponents throw you 1 or 2 problems. You stuff the takedown, they chain into the next thing, and you already know where it's going. Makachev was not that. Volkanovski said the exchanges went 2 or 3 steps deeper than I usually have to go. Remember that phrase. It comes back at the end of this video, and it explains everything. The consequence of that night was that the sport briefly believed Makachev was solvable. A featherweight had gone the distance and arguably won rounds. There was a blueprint now, which brings us to the hinge moment of the entire era. October 2023, Abu Dhabi. Charles Oliveira pulls out with a cut. Volkanovski takes the rematch on 11 days' notice. No camp, no cut, no preparation, walking into the exact same man who had just given him the fight of his life. In the first round, Makachev throws a head kick and turns the lights off. This was the night the narrative flipped from competitive to frightening. The blueprint everyone thought existed had a hole in the middle of it, and the hole was that Makachev had spent the 8 months since Perth adding the exact weapon nobody had prepared for. The grappler, who was supposed to be a one-dimensional wrestler, head-kicked a pound-for-pound great into unconsciousness. From that moment on, everything changed. Fighters stopped talking about beating him and started talking about surviving him. June 2024, Newark. Dustin Poirier on what he openly said might be the last night of his career, chasing the undisputed title he had spent 15 years missing by inches. Poirier did almost everything right. His takedown defense was visibly better than it had been against Khabib Nurmagomedov in 2019. He got back to his feet. He dragged Makachev into a fight rather than a chess match. Makachev himself later described it as feeling like a street fight and said it's the one he keeps rewatching. And Poirier still got choked unconscious in the 5th round. Afterwards, Poirier described the mindset that kept him going. He said that every time he got off the stool, he was thinking, I am going to be the world champion. 5 rounds, 5 separate times believing it, and the fight still ended with a Dar-es choke he could not break. The consequence of that night is the one that hurts the most, because it removed the last excuse available to everyone else. It wasn't that Makhachev's opponents were preparing wrong. Poirier prepared right. He executed. He hurt him. It didn't matter. November 2025, Madison Square Garden. Makachev moves up to welterweight and takes the title from Jack Della Maddalena, an undefeated UFC champion riding an 18-fight win streak. Della Maddalena, a man who had stuffed 6 takedowns from a wrestler to win the belt 6 months earlier, failed to stop a single takedown all night. He spent more than 19 of the fight's 25 minutes on his back. Then, Philadelphia. Ian Machado Gary. Makachev takes him down inside the first 2 minutes of round 1. In the second, coming out of a clinch, he lands a right hand and a left high kick and puts Gary on the canvas. Round 3 is Gary's. Thumping body kicks, sharp calf kicks, stuffed takedowns. The champion's face is marked up, his right side is being punished, and for 6 or 7 minutes, the arena genuinely believes it's happening. And then round 5, Makachev shoots inside the first 90 seconds, drags him down and takes his back. Body triangle. And he simply stays there for the rest of the fight. 4-9, 4-6, 4-9, 4-6, 4-8, 4-7, 17 straight. Anderson Silva's record, gone. Now here is where this stops being impressive and starts being genuinely frightening. Not just that Makachev beats elite fighters, that his opponents cannot describe the experience in normal fighting language. Bilal Muhammad has trained with him. He's a former welterweight champion. He knows exactly what Makachev's top pressure feels like, because he has lived under it in a gym, on purpose, repeatedly. Speaking to CBS Sports after watching Della Maddalena get flattened, Muhammad said this about that specific feeling. You don't want your first time being in the cage. Let that sink in. He called it shocking. A world champion, describing a physical sensation so disorienting that experiencing it for the first time under the lights, with a belt on the line, is functionally a disqualifying event. Not painful, not exhausting. Shocking, as in, your nervous system has no file for it. And here's the detail underneath it. Muhammad explained that Makachev and Khabib Nurmagomedov use their entire body weight on the ground. Most fighters use their upper half or their lower half. These men have been doing it their whole lives. That is the weight of what Islam Makhachev's opponents are actually walking into. Ian Machado Gary did not hold back. Hours after losing the biggest fight of his life, he posted a video statement to Instagram. No excuses, no complaints about the scorecards. no talk of a robbery. He said he had just fought arguably the greatest fighter we've ever seen in this sport. Understand who is saying that. This is the most confident fighter in the welterweight division. A man who spent years telling anyone who would listen that he was going to be champion, and who had called Makachev out to his face after beating Bilal Muhammad in Doha. 25 minutes with him produced that sentence. In the cage itself, Gary was equally blunt. He said he had believed in his heart and soul that he was the better man that night, and that Makachev won anyway. And while Gary was being gracious, Ilia Topuria was doing what he always does, attacking from the outside. After Madison Square Garden, Topuria publicly dismissed Makhachev's style, telling him on social media, "You're the most boring thing in this game." That contrast is the whole story. The men who have not fought him call him boring. The men who have fought him call him the greatest of all time. Jack Della Maddalena, days after losing his belt, put it in one line: Islam is one of the greats and deserved to win. Even Dana White's criticism after UFC 330 was really a compliment in disguise. White went after Gary for showing too much respect, saying that if he'd had even an ounce of killer instinct in that third round, the night might have gone differently, pointing out that Makhachev's face and right side were beaten up and Gary chose to touch gloves instead of hunt him. The UFC's CEO watched the champion get visibly damaged, and his complaint was that nobody was ruthless enough to capitalize. Now here is something you have to understand about Makhachev's record. It does not make logical sense. 17 consecutive UFC wins, more than Anderson Silva, more than John Jones, more than anyone who has ever competed in the promotion. Think about what that means in a sport where one punch from anybody ends everything. 29 wins, 1 loss, and that loss was in 2015. Before some of his current opponents had a professional fight. 13 submissions across 6 different techniques. And he is now only the 5th fighter in UFC history to successfully defend titles in 2 separate weight classes. That is a fact that will live in the record books for a very long time. The external picture confirms the cost. Makachev left Philadelphia with multiple cuts and a nose problem that needs attention. He told reporters at the post-fight press conference that none of it is severe, that he's 34, and that he intends to fight again before Ramadan arrives in February. Here is what makes the Makachev story different from what it looks like on the surface. The surface reading is that he's a suffocating wrestler who wins boring decisions by lying on people. Topuria said it out loud. Plenty of fans agree. But here is what was actually happening. Go back to what Volkanovski said, that the exchanges went 2 or 3 steps deeper than he normally has to go. That is not a compliment about strength or conditioning. That is a description of time. Everyone else in that cage is fighting the exchange that is happening. Makachev is fighting the exchange that is happening, the counter to it, and the counter to the counter, all at once. That's why Della Maddalena, who had just stuffed 6 takedowns to win a title, could not stop one. Nothing about his defense got worse in 6 months. He was defending the first layer against a man operating on the third. And that's why Poirier could execute a perfect game plan for 4.5 rounds and still lose. He wasn't outworked, he was out-anticipated. That is not luck. That is not a favorable style matchup. That is a man who has been building positional understanding since he was 10 years old, arriving at a level where his opponents are not losing the fight. They are losing the argument about what the fight even is. You cannot game plan for someone who is already 3 moves inside your game plan. So where does Islam Makhachev go from here? Option 1 is the fight the entire sport wants. Ilia Topuria, the current lightweight champion, the loudest voice in MMA, the one man who has spent years insisting he is the answer. Makachev has openly talked about wanting a spot on the UFC's White House card. That fight would be the biggest in the history of the sport, and it would require Makachev to drop back down to 155 at 34 years old. Option 2 is defending what he just won. Michael Morales and Carlos Pradas were both in the building in Philadelphia, both coming off knockouts, and were reportedly arguing in the crowd over who deserves the shot. Shavkat Rakhmonov is still out there. Welterweight is stacked in a way lightweight never was. And then there's the complication neither option accounts for: the calendar. Ramadan begins in February 2027, which takes Makachev and his team out of action for a stretch. He has already said he intends to fight again before then. That is a very narrow window for the biggest fight in MMA history to get made. As far as scheduling problems go, does it get any more complicated than being the pound-for-pound best fighter alive, holding a belt in a division you just moved to, with a super fight waiting one weight class below you, and a nose that needs surgery? Everything that was mapped out before Philadelphia, the White House card, the Topuria showdown, the clean run at welterweight, all of it on pause, because a record-breaking win came with a bill attached. Makachev's road will be longer than he wants it to be, and longer than his ego will accept. But everything this man has ever done in the sport has been done the slow way, the patient way, the way that takes 3 steps when everybody else takes 1. He waited years behind Khabib. He waited years for a title shot. He waited a full division to prove a point, and he has never once accepted a story that does not end with his hand raised. Which part of this shocked you the most? Was it Bilal Muhammad admitting that the feeling of Makhachev's top pressure is so disorienting you don't want to experience it for the first time in a cage? Was it Dustin Poirier getting off the stool 5 separate times still believing he was going to be world champion? Or was it Ian Machado Gary, minutes after losing his one shot at a UFC title, calling the man who beat him arguably the greatest fighter the sport has ever seen? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. And before you leave, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Octagon Report so you don't miss the next ones.